All right, please rise. Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen. Please be seated. Manningham Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as the traditional owners of lands and waterways now known as Manningham. Council pays respects to elders past, present and emerging, and values the ongoing contribution to enrich and appreciate the cultural heritage of Manningham. Council acknowledges and respects Australia's First Peoples as traditional owners of lands and waterways across country and encourages reconciliation between all. Manningham Council also acknowledges the contribution made to Manningham over the years of people of diverse cultures and backgrounds. I welcome all members of the public who have joined us in person and online to observe tonight's proceedings. I'd like to advise that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor to the gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event your voice and or image is broadcast by council. Tonight's meeting will be a hybrid council meeting. For those of you in the gallery, you will notice that Councillor Carly Lang has joined the meeting remotely this evening. As with all council meetings, we are taking questions from the public and encourage you to submit your questions in accordance with the normal practice. For members of the public who do not feel comfortable in attending meeting tonight in person, your questions will be read out by the acting CEO. A response will be provided where we have the information on hand. If we're unable to provide the meaningful response, we will take your question on notice and provide a response in writing. We will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any one issue. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit those additional questions in writing through the normal channels. Council meetings are conducted in accordance with our governance rules. I will introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda by calling it by name, number, and by reading the title. I will then call for a mover and a seconder of the motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors can join the debate on any item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. Item number 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies. Councillor Carly Lang, can you please confirm that you can see and hear me?
I can confirm that I can see and hear everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, very faintly, but I do acknowledge that you don't have much of a voice, but you're doing fine.
My apologies. I was.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Please text myself or acting CEO if there's any problems. We'll go for item number 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. No prior notifications of conflict of interest have been received. Councillors, would anyone like to give a notice of conflict of interest? Fantastic. Item number 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Lightbody.
I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 28th of June 2022 be confirmed.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Diamonte. Councillor Lightbody. Let's just put that to a vote, shall we? All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item number 5, presentations. Councillors, I have a presentation. Parks and Leisure Region Award of Excellence. We're honoured to receive a commendation. My goodness, I was going to say another word. For the Parks and Leisure Region Award of Excellence for Victoria and Tasmania. Strategic and Master Planning Award for Ruffy Lake Park Landscape Master Plan. Parks and Leisure Australia is a leading industry association for professionals in the sector aiming to build, serve and develop Australia's strong and united parks and leisure industry. In receiving the commendation, Manningham is recognised as a category leader. Led by the city design team and prepared by Urban Initiatives, the Ruffy Lake Park Landscape Master Plan is an exciting and detailed strategic document that provides clear direction for the park's future design, development and management over the next 15 years. We are very proud that Manningham's Premier Park's new master plan is one of industry excellence, may I say. We look forward to implementing the actions and we'll continue to provide a wealth of experience for all to enjoy. I'd like to extend a thank you to all staff that have been involved through this process, through the acting CEO, to pass on to the organisation on behalf of all council. Thank you. Item number 6, petitions. There are no petitions. Item number 7, public question time. There are no public questions. Item number 8, admission of urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item number 9, planning permit applications. And there are no planning permit applications. We're whipping through this very fast, councillors. Item number 10, city and planning and community. Item number 10.1, Livable City Strategy 2040 final endorsement. Do I have a mover?
Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion on this one, if it's okay. You can read that out.
Councillor Mayne.
I'd like to move that speaker time limits be suspended for the duration of debate on this item, 10.1.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Diamonte. Do you want to speak to that? Or, oh no, sorry, it's procedural, so we'll go straight to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Okay. So, councillors, a mover for the motion, Councillor Conlon.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move alternative motion.
Can you please turn on your mic, councillor?
A good idea.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I'd like to move that the officer's recommendation be adopted with the following amendments. That point B be amended to read that Council B endorse the final Livable City Strategy 2040, Attachment 5 Summary Report and Attachment 6 Technical Report, subject to actions contained within the LCS regarding the Doncaster Hill Precinct, progressing subject to further consideration and community consultation through the development of the Doncaster Hill Framework. And then a second point under B, the inclusion of a specific municipal-wide action within the LCS in the Greening Our City Key Direction Objective 4.5 to investigate the provision of water features in public spaces, parks, and as part of new large-scale developments. And a third point under B, the inclusion of a specific action to enhance the livability of Wonga Park with streetscape and public realm improvements in the Wonga Park Local Activity Centre and improved connections with Wonga Park Reserve within the Building Social and Cultural Connections Key Direction under Objective 6.5 and Warrandyte, Wonga Park and Park Orchards Neighbourhood Plans. A fourth point under B, which is to review the cycle of the LCS, the review cycle of the LCS be amended to occur once in each council term. And then point C, amended to read, delegate to the Acting Director, City Planning and Community, the authority to give effect to the amendments outlined in point B above and to make any typographical or minor corrections which may become necessary to the final adopted and published Livable City Strategy 2040 summary and technical reports, which do not change the intent and direction of the strategy.
Ooh. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lang. Councillor Conlon, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, this is a long time coming. This has been a number of years in the development stages. Lots of public consultation, as you know, councillors. I'll speak, given that this is the second time this has come up to council. I'll actually just focus initially on the amendments that we're talking about here. In particular, the action, the action contained within the LCS regarding the Doncaster Hill precinct being subject to further consideration and community consultation through the development of the Doncaster Hill framework. I mean, that's a very important part of our city that we need to get as right as possible, I believe. And I do support the further consultation phase as indicated there. And second point, to the second point in the amendment, as councillors know, there's this story of the Toronto planning strategy where basically they've got these fantastic water features all over the place, and it was in a document like this that initially started, and the sound of running water may cause some people to need to use the public facilities, but for many of us, it actually creates a nice, beautiful feeling of belonging and yeah, feeling at one with the environment. So that's something that I'm personally passionate about. In regard to the Wonga part, I will let Councillor Lang talk to that that amendment. In regard to the review cycle of the LCS being to occur, amended to occur once in each council term, I think it's important that we have a synchronisation of the reviews with council terms. And if you notice on page 215 of the papers, under the in the implementation, it was proposed that there would be a 5 years, 10 years, and then 20 years, which also creates a gap of 10 years for the last review. So I think it is important that each council, after being 2 years in the chair, I guess, like we have been, or almost 2 years, that there's an opportunity for that council to review the strategy, and it should be a living strategy. It should be able to be adjusted. If we stuck with the original Doncaster Hill plan and didn't change it, then things would be different now. So it's I guess it's that giving that discipline to make sure that we are on track, that it is a relevant document going forward. So in regards to the strategy itself, it is a great strategy, and I do congratulate all the officers involved in preparing it and doing that really in-depth consultation with the public and other stakeholders, taking their feedback on board, responding to that feedback, not always implementing it, but definitely I think we have an enhanced document now because of that consultation. In regards to the document itself, it's never going to be perfect. It is an overarching strategy though, and it is aspirational, and that's why I think it is good that we can put these aspirational ideas in now for before we approve it. And I think like it covers so much. It's such a key document, and I would actually like to mention the previous council for like kicking off this process and being involved, and a lot of that council's input is embedded in here. It talks about some key things that people are really interested in. I think one of the main things is the local city, the idea that we are local, living local, and I really like that idea. And it's important that we have vibrant, to want to live local, or to be happy to live local, we have to have vibrant activity centres, and that's a key. I think it's a key outcome of this document, that we have a plan to develop vibrant activity centres, not new ones. We're basically, but for all our major activity centres, we have a good plan. Thriving employment, housing choice and distinct communities, greening our city. This is something I'm passionate also about, and I think there's a lot of scope there for us to do the greening of our city better, and having that long-term plan. This is till 2040, so it's a 20-year plan. But all the work that will, I hope that in the next 5 to 10 years there'll be a lot of work to see a lot of this come to fruition, and I'm sure other councillors want to talk about sustainable transport and travel mode choice, as well as the building the social and cultural connections. So, councillors, I think it is a great document. It is something worthy of approving tonight in its current form with those amendments. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Lang.
Thank you. And can I confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Apologies, everybody, for my voice. I have been tested. I am COVID and influenza negative, but due to having a croaky voice and not being completely well, I have decided to engage remotely. So thank you for that opportunity. I'd also like to acknowledge officers for their hard work on this document. I want to thank them for taking the time to meet with individual councillors to explain the high-level strategies and the work that has gone on with the community and stakeholder groups, listening to their feedback, showing how that can or cannot be incorporated, addressing questions and incorporating suggestions. So I just wanted to commend the team on that. Some aspects worth noting and why the amendment was to include our Wonga Park precinct. The Livable City Strategy, I must say, is a high-level document that has long-term goals and aims. It is an aspirational plan to make our major and neighbourhood activity centres livable, but it doesn't exclude our local ones. In fact, it does include them under our Vibrant Villages Action Plan, and that's why that B is in there, because those local activity centres will be missing all throughout the municipality, and it's just to reassure everybody that they are included under our Vibrant Villages Action Plan. I just want to highlight some areas in the Livable City Strategy that came of noting and top priority, especially for our peri-urban and semi-rural bush district. The community feedback was all about protecting and enhancing the green wedge landscapes and ensuring that our residential streets reflect this rural road character. There was also the mention, and I know other councillors will go into it in more detail, but the accessibleness within our municipality, the accessibility within our municipality, upgrading our walking and cycling trails, linking them to our activity centres, our parks, our BMX facilities, and all our regional open spaces. I'd really like to take the point to acknowledge, and throughout all the feedback in all the activity areas, was the acknowledgement that Manningham is located on the traditional lands of our Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people and celebrate this connection to country, including the importance of all our waterways. What came out as also a high priority in the community feedback, as well as the consultation process, was reducing the congestion and traffic congestion of our roads, especially along in our peri-urban and semi-rural bushland areas of Manningham, along Yarra Street, Jumping Creek Road, Heidelberg and Heidelberg-Warrandyte Road. But doing this as well as maintaining the existing township character of these areas. Some of the comments that were given were, leave it as is, it's a great place to shop and dine, but most importantly, it came through that maintaining the existing natural environment and the surrounding areas was of most importance, as well as improving pedestrian and cycling access. The feedback did make, in those peri-urban and semi-rural areas, did make a less priority of sustainable forms of tourism and employment opportunities through events and overnight stays. And it really did rank high, protecting the native vegetation in our landscape and our bush-like settings. These aspirational high-level plans of our livable city strategy are all about making Manningham that vibrant city that it is, as well as that balance of country. It aims to green our city through providing biodiversity by protecting and enhancing our natural environment and providing high-level, inclusive, open space. I'd like to thank officers again for the work involved and also highlight that in all the boulevard treatments, there was looking at how these high-quality landscapes can be used with water urban design treatments like swale drains to be able to keep our natural resource of water and harness it for the resource that it is. The last thing I wanted to note is that at the end of the document, it talks about a Manningham vision. I won't read it in full because I can't, but I just wanted to summarize it. In 240, Manningham will be more innovative, green, sustainable, and connected. Our city will continue to offer you its unique balance of city and country, and our rural township district's character is valued and preserved. Our spirit is alive and inclusive across generations and cultures, and proudly acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners of our land and waterways. Therefore, I support the Livable City Strategy with its amendments and encourage my fellow councillors to do so too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang.
May I have a question?
Councillor Mayne.
So, Mayor, we've had moved and seconded an amended motion with 4 substantial changes. I'd like to ask for an officer view to be shared with councillors and the public on those 4 proposed amendments: the increased consultation on Doncaster Hill, the investment in Wonga Park streetscapes and connections as an action item, the water features as mentioned by the mover, Councillor Conlon.
Sorry, what's the question, Councillor?
And the regular 4-year review. So for an officer, what is the officer view on the 4 proposed amendments that have been moved and seconded?
I will refer that to the acting CEO. Rochelle Quatocki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mayne, thank you for your question. However, since the amendments have been received by the councillors, we won't be taking questions at this point in time in the debate. Thank you.
So I will continue into the debates. Any speakers against? Any other speakers? Councillor Del Monte.
Thank you, Mayor. So this strategy is aspirational plan to shape the future of Manningham over 20 years, and it does come with a huge number of actions. And like my fellow councillors, I want to thank the officers for the huge amount of work. One of the reasons that we sought the amendments, particularly to Doncaster Hill, is because it is such a big strategy with many, many actions in it. It can be easy to overlook pieces, and I do want to just raise 3 concerns I had that led to the amendments, just to give some background while we have the amendments. The first one is in Councillor Laura Mayne's ward, in Shram ward, to incorporate additional land west of Shram's reserve to higher density development. And I think it's really important that even though that specific action didn't get a lot of commentary, the neighbourhood plans was ranked as one of the top 5 priorities by the community, which included protecting the preferred neighbourhood character for post-1975 housing areas. And that was actually the #1 priority under considering housing choice and distinct communities. And if you look at that area west of Shram's Reserve, there's a lot of post-1975 housing around that area. So protecting that housing character was actually the #1 priority in Doncaster. So I think it's really important to note that. Further demonstrating this, the action to investigate areas for more medium density housing consistently ranked low in the list of priorities coming back for the community. So the community is telling us two things. They want to protect the character of the 1975 housing and beyond, and they also ranked low the medium density housing. So when I put these things together and I look at the action around incorporating additional land west of Australians Reserve to higher density development, those two specific bits of feedback don't sit well with me. And it's one of the reasons why I specifically asked for the amendment for specific community consultation against that action. And I think it's really important that we do. We all drive around that area to get to council, and they are very small streets. The blocks are about 600 square metres. There's a lot of congestion, tight corners. They're not built for high infrastructure. I could go on and on about the number of comments in the strategy around our schools are chock-a-block. Doncaster Primary, Birrelly, they're chock-a-block. So when we look at these developments, we've also got to look at all of those infrastructure considerations as well. So on that one, I'm very pleased that the council officers have said that we will look at further consultation with the community. I think it's a really important one. The second one was medium density around open space in Doncaster Hill and Jackson Court. And again, if you look at the feedback from the survey, there's consistent support for wanting to maintain our open space areas. And you have a look, for example, Australians Reserve close to council or Jackson Court, we've got housing around it, but they're different sizes. They're 1 stories, 2 stories, there's space between them. And I do understand that things like sunlight and overshadowing are all part of council officers' plans to have a look at these reserves. But I think we really need to specifically ask the community these questions. And that's again why I'm really pleased about the amendment. The third one I wanted to raise was changes to Doncaster and Williamson's Road. Doncaster and Williamson's Roads, plural, I should say. And again, it was one of the lowest ranking priorities that came back from the community to the lowest, I'm just reading, excuse me, looking down, to support slower road speeds along Doncaster Road and Williamson's Road to provide a better environment for pedestrians and cyclists, because with that includes reducing speeds to 40, introducing narrower carriageways and more frequent and longer pedestrian signals. So again, in the strategy, that was one of the lowest ranking priorities for Doncaster residents. And this is feedback we can't ignore. And I welcome the council's acknowledgement that, you know, we still need to improve our public transport in Manningham, and we can't be taking roads away from motorists when we don't have the bus network that we're advocating for, or the rail link or other forms of transport. So while I am supporting this strategy tonight, I'm doing so with those amendments because I am very aware that we should seek targeted community engagement on those pieces before we sign off on those actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? It's too many weird signals. I'm going to take it that that's Councillor Lightbody.
Yep. I just, like everyone else, I'd like to thank the officers for this amazing, massive piece of work that they've done over the past years. I haven't seen very many plans as extensive as this one, especially as an overarching document. And I think if by 2040 we've achieved this plan, I think Manningham will definitely be the envy of Melbourne. We'll have fantastic local centres, greater housing diversity, safer communities, and greener, more sustainable neighbourhoods. And I think a big aspect of this plan that I'd like to point out is sort of a re-looking of how we view our activity centres. This plan is very ambitious, and it seeks to look at how we use and how we visit our activity centres within our neighbourhoods. These are our local shopping centres. And this plan seeks to sort of investigate undergrounding or consolidating of our car parking, which provides a number of opportunities, which include opening up more land for public space, some more housing diversity, greater community activation, and this includes things such as community events, greater nightlife, which was one of the key priorities for our community in a number of our activity centres, as well as expanded commercial activity, and all of this together would help our neighbourhoods within Manningham become more of a 20-minute type neighbourhood where you can go to your activity centres and do most of what you need to do throughout the day. I think this plan also has other really good sort of byproducts, if you will, in terms of benefits for the community. And a big one is public safety, I think. Not only does this plan look at the safety of pedestrians and cyclists, but it also looks at the safety of the individual through increasing public space activation and nightlife. We're actually meaning that people are going to be longer in our activity centres. They're going to spend more time there, and at night times when they could currently be sort of quiet, empty car parks, there'll be more bustling type activity centres, which means there'll be lots of more people around, people doing lots of different activities. And it also means that if we, for instance, put car parks underground, you're eliminating some risks associated with climate change and increasing heat, because you're taking away the risks that are associated with really hot car interior temperatures. Cars will no longer be sitting in the sun for hours at a time, and that helps reduce the risk of injury to people using our activity centres coming and going, but it also reduces the risk of deaths in summer, which we do hear about every time those months come around. So I think this plan, as a big overarching plan, gives us a lot of work to do over the next few decades. And I'm excited to see, as Deirdre pointed out, I'm really excited to see the further consultation for each of our neighbourhood centres as we develop the plans that will sit underneath this overarching plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Laura Main.
Thank you, Mayor. This document, as stipulated by my colleagues already, is a really thorough and aspirational view of our municipality in 2040. Given this is a final endorsement, this report notes the very extensive community consultation that was undergone. Manningham undertook many avenues of consultation for this document. For example, if you were at any of our local markets recently in the past few months, I'm sure you would have seen a Manningham store with our officers who are presenting our ideas to the community for the feedback. Of all the consultations, some of the interesting reflections and findings from my ward was, in terms of Doncaster Hill, the priority for improved nighttime economy, tree lining our streets, having a more vibrant main street and town square, improving public transport, improving walking and cycling connections. In terms of Jackson's Court, this was things like having a more diverse shops and services, again, improving our nighttime economy, again, an improved vibrant main street or town square, tree lining our streets, multi-storey or underground car parks, as Councillor Lightbody has already talked about. And these priorities were generally similar across other activity centres in our municipality. And then Doncaster as a whole, again, greenways, the support for multi-purpose use of schools and sporting facilities, which was an interesting finding I found. Then supporting employment development, advocating for suburban rail loop, and more. These are all very broad and high-level depictions of what our community wants to see in Manningham in the future, and concepts that this plan is aiming to address. All of these ideas have been integrated throughout our plan, delivering a variety of actions, whether these be existing things we're already implementing or future ideas that we want to introduce. Though I do want to add that it is within Council's responsibility to take our time to really interpret and analyse these high-level and broad priorities and see what they really mean in terms of what the action that Council undertakes. as Councillor Diamonte already discussed, having some of these priorities almost conflicting with one another. And I support the need for future consultation and particularly sensitive initiatives. That being said, I think this is a great document, and given the detail, I really recommend residents to give it a flick through, especially if they want to know more about their specific area or their specific activity centre. I'd say it deals with the majority of the really ingrained and perpetual concerns that I hear residents talking about, and definitely reflects a Manningham that I'm excited to see evolve. So I'd like to thank our officers for their time working on this, especially Frank, Sinead, Gabrielle, Lydia, Carrie, Niall, and more, and looking forward to it being supported by this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Councillor Chen, saw your hand up before.
Thank you, Mayor. Manningham continues to be an attractive place for families to live. So the purpose of this strategy is to enhance livability. Therefore, when develop our vibrant villages action plan identified in this strategy, we need to ensure that the residential amenity within and adjoining the activity centers are protected. The final draft of the strategy includes greater emphasis on the nighttime economy. Nighttime economy can bring economic benefits, but it also associates with issues such as alcohol-fueled violence, crime, antisocial behavior, and ecological impacts of light pollution. So in developing the action plan and other relevant policies and strategies, an integrated approach that take into consideration environmental and social concerns along with the economic developments is critical to the future sustainability of our activity centers. Of course, this strategy also promotes cycling as one of the sustainable transport modes, and new off-road paths will be introduced, but we cannot discount our seniors, children, and women's travel needs. If off-road paths include share paths, are they wide enough to accommodate wheelchairs, prams, and pushers? Are they safe for our workers? Have we established a broadly accepted culture of sharing by share path users? So therefore, when a high numbers of users are identified on a share path, we actually need a segregated or separated footpaths that always in the mind of councils to give greater consideration. So I also look forward to a timely review of our bicycle strategy and implementation. Madam Mayor, there will be many different neighborhood plans and projects in the future. So engagement and consultation is always very important. So there are many opportunities for our community to be engaged and consulted. So I really want to take this opportunity just to encourage our residents to register your Say Manningham, because this is a place that you can share your idea and just get information from council, and to provide further opportunity to provide further feedback to those beautiful plans and projects. So actually, this is really important because we can't afford to ignore those important information. So you lose the opportunity to provide feedback. So I just urge people that this is a tiny opportunity just to register on your Say, so you will get a tiny notification. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No other speakers?
I'd like to speak.
Councillor Main, Stephen Main.
I give everyone the debate's finished except for the wrapping up. So councillors, this is probably the most important high-level strategy that we will approve. Consultation's been going since 2019 It's a 20-year strategy with hundreds of action items. It's a little bit unusual that to have an officer recommendation saying, basically note the feedback, endorse the strategy and authorise some wordsmithing. So added to that is now 4 specific recommendations, as mentioned earlier in the question, which are all worthwhile recommendations and which, subject to a little bit of discussion, I'm comfortable supporting. But in a 495-page report, it does raise the question to me as to whether there are any other amendments that should be debated internally, tested through the council processes, because this has all happened very late in the day. An email, late afternoon, mid-afternoon, officer discussions with individual councillors, and here's a package of 3 changes, supplemented with the 4th on the timing by Councillor Conlon when he moved the motion. So I just want to foreshadow that I'm interested in having another 4 weeks at looking at this, giving the community an opportunity to go through the 495 pages and look at the hundreds of actions. Because we as a group of councillors haven't done a page turn looking at the items. So for me, it's the first I've heard tonight on water features and Wonga Park. And I think there are other issues. I'm regretful that I haven't put up amendments potentially in my ward. I haven't had any individual meetings with officers, and I probably should have. I have flagged internally the idea with councillors of laying this report on the table for a month, with the formality of it being in the council agenda, which is very different and more substantial to talking to people at shopping centres, filling in your say surveys. It has the gravity of, after 3 years, this is the 495 pages that the officers have put for consideration tonight. Plus, there's some fairly substantial amendments that have been read out. So for someone watching the live stream, I had to listen to it being read out and listen to the debate. So I'd just like to flag that I think that we need another SBS and a page turn. What I'm proposing will endorse the specifics of the 4 amendments. I do like the idea of 4 yearly reviews, not 5 yearly reviews, as Councillor Conlon has proposed.
Councillor, there's possibly a point of order because it's contrary to the governance rules, because I think because of the standing orders, you can't move an alternate or a deferral. We need to first resume standing orders, go to the alternate motion first. If that's lost, then you can move according to the governance rules.
Yeah.
So
I'll get to the point. I'm moving a procedural deferral motion
Councillor.
well, I can move a deferral motion of what has been moved.
No, it's
So
sorry, I'm going to pause for 1 minute. Sorry, Councillor, I'm just going to pause the debate for 1 moment and just clarify with governance.
If an alternate motion or a deferral motion clarify if you roll the if an alternate motion is you should have a choice for that alternate motion. Council may wish to propose that we resume regular standing orders for the duration of this motion.
So I've got a mover to resume standing orders from Councillor Stephen Mayne. I've got a seconder from Councillor Gough. All those in favour? It is unanimously carried. We have resumed.
I'd now like to move the following procedural deferral motion.
Hang on. 1 moment, Councillor.
Councillor Mayne's motion. I'll remove those 2. Yep. So I'd like to propose that Council defers consideration of the final endorsement of the proposed Livable City Strategy 2040 for 4 weeks, until the council meeting scheduled for August 23, 2022.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Conlon will second that. So that now goes, there's no debate because it's a procedural motion. So I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour of it going to a deferral for a month? For 4 weeks. So that's Councillor Stephen Mayne, Councillor De Monte, Councillor Conlon, Councillor Goff. Those against the motion? Councillor Lightbody, Councillor Chen, Councillor Lang, Councillor Laura Mayne, Councillor Kleinert. Lost.
I'd like to now move an extension of speaking time
So
on the amended motion moved by Councillor Conlon.
okay, do I have a, no, so for, okay, so it needs to be moved by another councillor. So Councillor Conlon, put your please on the, sorry.
Thank you. I'd like to move an extension of time for Councillor Mayne to finish his comments.
Seconder, I think Councillor Lightbody slightly got that one up. Second, those in favour? Extension of time for Councillor Mayne. That is unanimously carried. You have another 2 minutes, Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Okay, so in the final 2 minutes, I was going to say the strategy talks about a 24,574 expansion of our population over the next 20 years. That's 1,638 per year every year. That's 4 mayoral balls sold out every year. It's the biggest challenge we've got. I personally disagree with not touching our acre block areas. So we've got 5,500 sites that are over 1 acre, and this proposes for 20 years to do absolutely nothing. So all of that accommodation growth is going to come on Doncaster Hill and on the main roads. And in my view, really silly acre block zones such as like Reynolds Road and Williamson's Road, and between Arcane Nursing Home and Serpil Primary, you've got 100 residents in the nursing home, you've got 1,500 students in the primary school, and you've got 9 acre blocks there. And we are proposing zero change. These are the sorts of issues I would have liked to have debated. We haven't had a page turn, and there's so many different amendments that I think should have been discussed, because this is such an important, long-standing document with hundreds of actions. And with a very brief debate on October 26 last year when the draft was put out, we've now had, I think, a relatively brief debate. We haven't had the page turn, and there are a range of issues. I disagree with further locking up the green wedge for tourism. It's in there. It's coming from the community. So the community have said, dial that down, but the councillors haven't had a chance to say, we don't agree with dialing it down. I don't agree with dialing it down. I want to encourage tourism in the green wedge. But I'm voting tonight for 400 other items that I do agree with, but there's a number that I don't agree with, and I feel we've had insufficient debate, and another month would have helped. But the vote is the vote. I have to consider my position in terms of voting overall, but thank you for listening to the contribution.
Any further speakers? No. Councillor Conlon, I believe you can close if you like to. Okay, let's pop that to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Goff, Councillor Laura Mayne, Councillor Conlon, Councillor Chen, Councillor Lang, Councillor Lightbody, Councillor De Monte, Councillor Kleinert, 4. Against, Councillor Stephen Mayne, carried. Item 10.2, Doncaster Park and Ride Transit Orientated Development. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chen.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Chen.
Thank you, Mayor. Doncaster Park and Ride is a major bus interchange in Manningham, serving 7 bus routes, including 2 DART smart bus routes. 907 serving Mission Station to CBD via Doncaster Road. and 908 serving the Pines and the CBD. It provides over 400 car parking spaces for commuters. During construction of the Northeast Link, Doncaster Park and Ride will have a like-for-like upgrade and remain as a car park only facility. No doubt the site is underdeveloped given its close proximity to Doncaster Hill. We all know that Doncaster Hill has been identified as a major strategic growth corridor in many state and local government strategic documents. In the long term, the park and ride will eventually become a high-density development. The Northeast Link works present an opportunity to upgrade the site. It is also a great opportunity for council to advocate this site to be further developed into a TOD. TOD stands for Transit-Oriented Development. A TOD will support both public transport services and enhance mixed-use land use opportunity for this underdeveloped site. To achieve this, we need to advocate the state government to increase funding allocation for redevelopment of Doncaster Park and Ride TOD. Officers have engaged with consultants to develop high-level design concepts of a transit-oriented park and ride facility and a preliminary economic feasibility study of the design concept to strengthen council's advocacy effort. The design concept can incorporate 657 car park spaces compared to the existing 400 spaces, 2 new public open space, about 300 ongoing jobs, retail and commercial uses, improved public transport access, enhanced walking and cycling connections, improved access to retail for surrounding residents, improved safety through mixed-use activation. The economic feasibility study demonstrates a strong case for mixed use on the site. The financial returns for the retail and commercial uses reduces the overall cost of the project. It is even more compelling to see from the analysis that the net cost to the state government is estimated to be 24.45 million compared to 27.44 million if retail and commercial uses are excluded. This is about $3 million saving to the state government. Of course, further consultation will be required with abutting residents and address their feedback to the ultimate design and land use outcomes. If the concept plan is endorsed tonight, advocacy for this project will commence before the November state election. Council will write to the state government ministers for the inclusion of a TOD in the Northeast Link designs. Council will refer this initiative to any relevant state government bodies, including the Victorian Transport Project Standing Advisory Committee for further consideration. So I urge council support to this design. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Iphone.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the officers as well for putting this together, and I'd like to thank Councillor Chen for her really detailed summary of the concept plan. And I think something really important to discuss here is the fact that this plan just makes a lot of sense. It makes sense that we're consolidating the car park and providing some more public open space. I rephrase that. We would like to consolidate the car park and provide some more public open space. It also makes sense for people who are coming back from work in a bus from the city, rather than just jumping in their car and heading off to another shopping centre to grab their groceries and things. It makes sense that they should be able to grab all that stuff when they get off the bus and then head home from there. It also makes a whole lot of sense for people living in that immediate area to be able to walk somewhere where they can grab some of the groceries or other retail opportunities, or visit a new local local park without having to climb up Doncaster Hill. So this strategy, it makes a lot of sense from a 20-minute neighbourhood perspective and a livability perspective, especially after we've just approved our Livable Cities plan. And I think this concept for the Doncaster Park and Ride really aligns with that and aligns with our vision of how we want our neighbourhoods to function in the future. So I'm really glad that we have this concept plan that has been developed and that we are able to put this out to the public as what our view of how the Doncaster Park and Ride should be in the future, and then put that challenge to the government to actually do something great with this site. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor. Any speakers against? Any other speakers? Councillor Del Monte.
Thank you, Mayor. So this proposed site is at the boundary of Tullamore Ward, my ward, very proudly. It's also the boundary between Manningham and Boroondara. And for many, many years, I think it's been a no man's land. I think even before the Doncaster Park and Ride that's there was built, it was a no man's land. And I don't know if it's because it was a little bit of boundary land, but I mean, it was a bit of a green wedge before the freeway was extended many, many years ago. But on the weekends and at night, it's quiet. I don't necessarily think it's a very safe area. There's a walking path at the moment to Doncaster Park and Ride that I think is dark even during the daylight, and not necessarily safe and isolated. So I agree with Councillor Lightbody. I'm going to use his line. It just makes sense. I think it's a really good opportunity, and hopefully being able to leverage the North East Link program, you can build something that not only provides the additional car park space, but it does provide the retail and the business. And I'm going to use your words again, it makes sense. You get off the bus, get your groceries. But I think it will be really good for this corner of Manningham. I think it will be really good for this little corner of Doncaster. And of course, Greythorne. There's going to be a lot of residents just in Greythorne, just up the road, that will benefit hugely from this project if it goes ahead. I do note the residents in Hender Street may be wondering, well, there's going to be another development in my backyard. But I want to pick up on some of the points that Councillor Lightbody said in these proposed plans that we would like to use to advocate for this. There are 2 open spaces, reducing some of that concrete. There is improved safety for those residents, particularly at night and particularly on the weekends. There will be enhanced walking paths. And I think from what I've seen, it's quite a sensitive design as well, rather than just looking at an empty concrete car park. So I really do support it. I think it's a tremendous idea, and I hope the government agrees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Romain.
Thank you, Mayor. Some of my takeaways, though many of them have already been stated, but I'd just like to further emphasise. I think this is a great opportunity to add a pocket of retail in an area which doesn't have very accessible retail, not only increasing the quality of transport for PTV users, but also improving the livability of the local area. As Councillor De Monte was explaining, this would create a more safe environment for travellers, especially at night. It's not the best place to be at night at the moment. And having a more well-lit and occupied facility would definitely improve this. Given the state government's commitment to improving the bus network in our local area, I think this addition, as Councillor Lightbody explained, and I'll use it again, just makes sense. So, and then given the increased road demand that we can imagine NELP is going to create, a like-for-like facility would not accomplish this goal. So yes, I highly recommend this idea is supported, and I'd like to again thank the officers for their work putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
So I'd like to congratulate the officers for a really innovative piece of work here. I think this is a compelling argument, and perhaps we should consider adding it to our advocacy list for the upcoming state election when we consider it at the August council meeting. Maybe we should even do something similar with the 6 hectares of space that's going to be left over at Manningham Interchange once that's done. Few people realise that anyone can lodge a planning application on any property in Victoria, and the council has to deal with it seriously. So I can propose a 10-storey tower on Councillor Conlon's house, I don't even own it, nothing to do with it, and the officers have to consider it, ask for extra information and reduce report and formally reject it. This is not that, but it is similar to that. It's not our land, it's the state's land, but we've come up and paid for it. Hanson, a great firm, come up with a really innovative design, love the open space. The tender is open now, multi-billion-dollar tender that the state is letting shortly before the election. I really hope that all the bidders, hope Duncan Elliott's listening, the CEO of Nella, show them this, encourage them to come up with a solution like that. Because I think, frankly, the state's innovation on this site could be more creative. We've come up with a great solution. So I just really hope that people run with it. And it's quite unusual. I mean, how many large car parks in metropolitan Melbourne does the state government own that are not associated with a tram or a train? Not many. So this speaks to Manningham's status as the only one of the 30 metro councils with no train or tram. It speaks to our status of having the highest level of car ownership of any council in Australia at 2.3 cars per house. We are a very car-focused place, and this place is full at 7 o'clock most mornings pre-COVID. I'd love to see the number 48 tram extended to further energise this site were this development to come forward. But at the end of the day, this is a great idea. Well done to the officers for coming up with this under their own steam, fully supported by the officers, by the councillors with great enthusiasm. And let's hope the state and the private sector runs with it.
Any other councillors? I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. 10.3, Integrated Water Management Strategy Implementation Plan. Mover? Councillor Lang.
That the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Lang, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to acknowledge again the team, Roger and the team, for their hard work on our Manningham Integrated Water Management Strategy. People might not know what it is, but it is a high-level strategy that incorporates our flood mapping, our flood modelling, and works alongside our drainage infrastructure capital works. The purpose of our Integrated Water Management Strategy is for council to have a strategic and overarching strategy that looks at our water management within the municipality. It is included that council is in the process of conducting investigations at over 140 sites to improve the existing drainage system and the GIS data to ensure that our flood modelling accurately represents the existing drainage network and it has more adequate models of our overland flows. The Manningham Integrated Water Management Strategy incorporates water-related social and economic objectives too, such as we're treating, reusing wastewater as an urban resource, reducing flood impacts through stormwater harvesting, irrigation, and relieving the pressure on our downstream stormwater drainage network, especially during peak times. It allows for stormwater and treated wastewater to infiltrate our local soils and replenish our groundwater stores, and it conserves portable water supplies. We all know that drought and floods are experienced as a natural hazard, and more careful planning and management of our floodplains and overland flows paths can reduce the risk to our community, the environment, and the costs associated with flood damage. This project aims to inform the community and council regarding our flood risk, our flood modelling, the water cycle, and the pressure on water availability in this climate change emergency. I welcome a transparent, clear, relevant, and agreed communications with all stakeholders through a robust community engagement process and council briefings on all relevant aspects of the project. I really look forward to welcoming and meeting the Community Reference Panel as a key stakeholder group in our Manningham's Integrated Water Management Strategy. And I support the project and ask my fellow councillors to do so too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am seconding this because really what we're doing here in this particular motion is noting. We are noting the progress of our flood mapping project. And we're saying it without mentioning the flood mapping, but yes, it is there. And note the closure of the expression of interest process. So, and everything is referring to this integrated water management strategy. Now, I do congratulate people, and I know that council have done a lot of work with regard to flood mapping and water management. We're cozying it in terms of integrated water management and looking at all sorts of other things and making it more holistic, and it is a high level document, and at that level I agree with it. But let's make no mistake, this is also taking the place of our drainage strategy, and it is also taking the place of our flood mapping and overland flow strategies and things like that, and what we're going to do with it. And ultimately, it is going to be, and buried deep in this, are overlays put on people's properties, naming them in our flood zones, because that's what didn't occur on the last time all of this went out. Now, it's important work, and we actually do need to do the mapping, and we do need to do all of those things to inform us and our community, as it says in here. That is so very important. But I did ask a question before this meeting, and I was assured that doesn't prohibit. But really, if all this is about running a flood mapping again, getting overlays on people's properties and telling them that their land floods, I don't believe that's good enough. What we do need to do is know where the water goes and fix it. We know we've had drainage problems in this city for all the time I've been on council and from the early 90s. We know it had severe problems. And at the time, it was about $80 million worth of work. And believe me, at $4 million a year, we've got nowhere near that sort of level that we need to be at. So I think it is an important committee that's going to, and an important role of our officers who have very good informed information to come through to really get to understand the extent of the drainage and water problems that we do have in Manningham. Because I read here in the project outcomes, we're having a 10-year plan to identify infrastructure projects, and I hope that occurs, improvement opportunities and policy requirements and other measures to realise our targets. But it says this project of the water management strategy does not include the development of capital drainage improvement and upgrade programs.
10 seconds.
So I do hope that running parallel with this, we are going to use this information. Can I have an extension, ma'am?
Councillor Goff would like an extension.
So moved.
Councillor Stephen Mayne, second is Councillor Conlon. Those in favour?
Gary.
That is carried. You have another 2 minutes, Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do hope that that occurs, because by renaming something and putting it out is one thing. Now, it does include a lot of other areas, and it is a higher level document. But believe me, I think our community expects us to be alleviating these other problems, and this needs to feed in to where we need to, in the future, prioritise some drainage, because in a lot of cases, us fixing our responsibility, which are our drains, will alleviate overland flows, which will be showing up on these flow paths that we've actually documented into the past. So I hope it doesn't diminish that and give council an ability to just wash its hands of that problem that we've told the people their property floods. I hope this informs into the future, and that's where I'll be wanting the council to use this to inform us where we need and how much we need to spend to fix what is inherently the responsibility of council, and it's our problem to actually ensure that we've got proper drainage in Manningham for our community. So with that, I'm seconding this to go ahead and to work on so that it will inform those outcomes.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Any speakers against? Any other speakers? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Briefly pick up on a couple of comments made by Councillor Goff. I think it's a bit simplistic to say the whole solution can be fixed by council spending ratepayers' money more on heroic drainage investment.
Councillor Goff, what's your point of order?
It's a misrepresentation of what I said. I never said the whole system could
I
be
withdraw.
fixed.
Thank you. I'll accept that withdrawal. Thank you. Continue, Councillor Mayne.
I think this is quite a complex issue. So we need to talk about climate change. Anyone who's had a look at Splendour in the Grass, or maybe it should be called Splendour in the Floodplain, look at all this flooding of the Hawkesbury of late, realise that severe weather events are happening far more frequently than previously. And many councils and state governments across Australia have inappropriately permitted development on floodplains or properties that have flooded, whether it's Ipswich 10 years ago, what we're seeing now with the Hawkesbury. So I disagree with this idea that actually accurately putting overlays on properties that are prone to flooding is something that should be avoided or not done. And somehow you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars fixing council-owned drains to deal with historical errors and changing weather events. I also point out that up until 2018, to get a drainage investment in Manningham, you had to get the property owner to vote for it and contribute. Same with footpaths. That long-term policy by successive councils stifled investment and should have been repealed decades ago, just as all those inappropriate permits were being issued. So for those who've been here for a long time, I don't think it's as simple as saying we now should suddenly start spending hundreds of millions of dollars of ratepayers' money. I think we
10
should
seconds.
focus on actually accurately getting the overlays right.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Any other speakers? Councillor yes, Councillor Lang, would you like to sum up?
I wasn't going to, but I will. Just to touch on both Councillor Goff and Councillor Mayne's point, it clearly says in the integrated water management strategy that incorporating water modelling, water mapping and drainage infrastructure is included and works concurrently with this. So we are not excluding, we are not just looking at one model to fix a problem. We are looking at all the aspects that are involved in flood modelling, mapping and our overland flows, and looking at a way that we can incorporate all of those aspects to fix a big problem that was in our municipality, but we'll need a number of solutions and we'll need all parties involved. And that's why we have many stakeholders who are working on this strategy, as well as community representation who have either lived experience with flooding. So we are really looking at from an overarching, all aspect, all stakeholders included, to address water flows, water mapping and water modelling in our municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Let's put that to a vote. Those in favour? That is unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. 10.4, Amendment C 137, Man adoption. I would say that's Manningham adoption or Man. I'll just say Man. Amendment to Special Building Overlay Schedule 1, SBO 1, in and around Hillcroft Drive, Templestowe. Do I have a mover?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Councillor Stephen Mayne, seconder. Councillor Jeff Goff. Councillor Mayne, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a good news story. So the residents of Hillcroft Drive, I think, suffered unfairly from some overlays that came from a previous amendment. And after some significant agitation led by two residents in particular, Vincent Tester and Paul Harris, Melbourne Water were persuaded to revisit the issue of the overlays. Council strongly supported the revisiting of the overlays, and we are now at the final stages of a process where we are supporting this proposed amendment to go back to the Planning Minister for final approval which will have the effect of removing the overlay entirely from 27 properties and partially removing it from 12 properties. I think, frankly, it probably took Melbourne Water a little bit too long to effectively say we were wrong, but we got there. And getting this issue right is very important as we go into the broader issue of revisiting the wider flood mapping, modelling and overlays and management issues that were discussed in the previous item. So I think this strengthens our credibility and Melbourne Water's credibility, satisfies the residents. The fact that we have none here tonight, I think, says it all, that they're confident we're actually going to vote the right way after following us on every step of the way, making sure that we would get here. It's been a long process and it's a good outcome. And I just urge the Minister to get out the pen and sign as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this particular issue is not only one, but there were quite, if anyone lived back into the former overlays that were being put on people's property, that's the reason that we're doing the flood modelling again and going through it, because when individuals go up against a bureaucracy, individuals are extremely impotent as far as where they can get. And to take something that we know in this case was a depth roughly 10 times the height of the real depth and was maintained to be accurate, true and correct over a long period of time, with the refusal and the frustration of it being looked at. By the time it got to a council meeting, we actually went with our motion to the Minister to actually pass, just to get our flood mapping through for Melbourne Water, to pass that level. We abandoned the twos and threes, but we did. I think a lot of people here saw the anomaly in this particular place, but governments didn't. Bureaucracies just put their back up and said no, because the order of effect on that particular area, they were saying was 10 times greater than anything. And I think that experience by an individual, I suppose it reminds me a bit of the castle, but you know, an individual against bureaucracy, and when bureaucracy comes down with edicts on people, sometimes people do fight back. So congratulations to those people who actually stuck to their guns. Council did recognise it and recommended to the Minister that it be taken off, and it's taken a long time for Melbourne Water to come to the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Any other speakers? Let's put that to a vote, shall we? Those in favour? That is unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. Item 11, City Services. There are no reports. Item 12, Experience and Capability. Again, there are no reports. Item 13, Chief Executive Officer. 13.1, Audit and Risk Committee, new independent member 2022. A mover. Councillor Laura Mayne.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor Laura Mayne.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to welcome Jonathan to the committee. I think he'll be a great fit, has been a great fit so far, and adds the perspective we're looking for. He's a chartered accountant, registered company auditor, and has had executive roles with Peak Victorian Regulatory Authority. He's currently chair of a local government audit and risk committee and is a general member of 3 other committees. Easy to say, he's very experienced and I'm sure will provide great insights and contributions. He has big shoes to fill, replacing Teresa, who I'd like to take the time to thank for her contributions. In my short time on the committee, I found her comments insightful and really appreciated her efforts to make sure the councillors were tied in with what was being discussed, helping bridge that gap between the world of audit and risk and the council. So I'd like to congratulate Jonathan on his success getting appointed to the committee, especially given the high demand for the position, and I look forward to working with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chen.
Nothing further to add, except to just a very warm welcome to Mr. Johnson. Kavilivitis. I hope that my pronunciation is correct, to the Audit and Risk Committee, because your contribution will be really highly anticipated and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Any speakers against? Any other speakers? Let's put that to a vote. Those in favour? That is unanimously carried. Thank you, councillors. Right. Councillor 13.2, informal meetings of councillors. Do I have a mover?
Mayor, I'd like to move an alternative motion that the recommendation be adopted with the following minor amendments. Attachment 2, strategic briefing session 14 June 2022, paragraph 2, under the heading conflict of interest disclosures, replace the word sale with save.
Very good. Good pickup. Do I have a seconder to that? Councillor De Monte. Would you like to speak to it? No.
Just briefly. Councillor Goff has to get away, but this is a very transparent system where our informal meetings are disclosed to the public, including what was discussed, who attended at the council level, and any conflicts of interest. So there's 9 different meetings that are in this report. In terms of the amendment, Councillor Conlon quite appropriately declared a conflict of interest on my motion relating to Heidi in the Our Valley Country Club. But the minutes here talk about he was trying to organise a proposal to sale the 9-hole golf course, when of course he's attempting to save the 9-hole golf course. So that's been amended. And the other meeting I draw everyone's attention to is the 55-minute meeting with Major Road Projects Victoria on June 14. It was a really good meeting. I'd like to thank the Mayor, particularly for her advocacy in her ward to engage with Major Roads Project Victoria, get them into the room next door, and we gave them a good grilling for 55 minutes. And there's quite good detail in the report here about what was discussed, that there'd be no night works at Foot Street, that compensation would be offered, non-cash, but compensation to the traders like the car wash and Market Fresh, and that they were saying the $130 million project was ahead of schedule. This is the big Fitzsimons Lane project. So we haven't really had a chance to discuss that with all this disruption that's gone on with one of the biggest road projects in Manningham's history. But we are acting for the community, trying to protect the amenity of the residents and the impacts. The Mayor's been working particularly hard with the Horton Street residents and others, and we had a really solid session with, I think, 3 or 4 representatives from Major Road Projects Victoria, and that is disclosed for the public to see in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor De Monte, let's put that to a vote. Those in favour? That is unanimously carried. Item 13.3, documents for sealing. Councillor Conlon.
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted with the addition of the following agreement: consent to build over an easement agreement under Section 173 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, Council and AP Mithun and MJ Mithun of 5 Mincher Avenue, Templestowe Lower.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder? Councillor Lightbody. Those in favour? That is unanimously carried. Item 14, notices of motion. 14.1, notice of motion by Councillor Stephen Mayne, NOM 3/2022. Mover?
Do I have to read this in full? No, I just move that the motion be adopted.
It's in the papers, yep. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor De Monte. Councillor Mayne, you have the floor.
Just briefly, the purpose of this motion is a modest disclosure initiative. Council owns $1.3 billion worth of property, land and buildings. But we don't have any disclosure at the moment as to what it is or what it's worth. So under this motion, in the annual report this year, we'll have a list of our top 20 most valuable property holdings. I'll be interested to see what comes out. I'm probably predicting Ruffy Lake Park will be top of the pops at near 100 million. This site, 699 Doncaster, will be second at maybe 60 to 80, but I don't know. I'll be interested to see. Other sites that will come up will be the Western Car Park at Tunstall Square, which we own, the depot, the Manicare site, maybe Donvale Reserve, Templestowe Reserve, Tedajani. What will be in the top 20? It will be interesting. If we vote for this, councillors, we will find out, and the community will find out, The officers are in support, saying it's not an overly burdensome on there. From an administrative point of view, they're happy to put the data together, include it in the annual report. So I hope this is a non-contentious motion that can be supported.
Thank you. Councillor De Monte. Any speakers against? Let's put that to a motion. Speaker, Councillor Goff.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Look, I will probably be supporting this, but quite honestly, using things in the name of disclosure and everything else, we can do that. And yes, it does. But how relevant is it to Manningham and its community to publish its top valued properties? You see, if Roffey Lake Park comes out as one of its most valuable properties and given a price to it, it is absolutely meaningless. Its value is far more than its actual physical price that the land is worth. And that's what you're going to be getting a figure on. And what's it going to be used for? Are we going to use it to borrow off as security because we haven't got enough money? Or are we looking at selling it? Because why would you be, and this is I hope this never gets treated as a thing to saying that we're looking at selling these properties, or we're interested in trading these properties, or we're putting these properties up for anything for sale or anything else. Because the valuation, there's no tax deduction for us. For businesses there are, and I can understand it. It's very important to know what your assets are as a private business. But as for a municipality, unless you're going to be doing something with them, selling them, I don't know that it's of that great a thing. Plus, if you are using open space and things like that, it basically has a greater value than the monetary value. And that goes for any properties that we own. We do have flexibility with properties. We do buy and sell properties, and we have done that over the years. But to publish us out there, yeah, it might be a great piece of information if you're really curious. But as I've been walking around Manningham in the last 25 years, I haven't met very many people that have asked what our most 20 valuable properties are.
10 seconds.
But I will support this motion. I'm in speaking, and that's fine. We can publish that information.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers? Let's put that to a... There's no speaker against.
It doesn't matter. Under the new rules, you don't need that.
Closing remarks. Apologies, Councillor.
So at the moment, we pay for the valuations of all of our properties. So this is something we already pay for. I don't understand why you'd want to keep it as secret officer or secret valuer business.
Councillor, what's your point of order? Sorry, Councillor, what's your point of order?
My point of order is an inaccurate statement.
Just use the correct term.
It's improper or it's misleading.
Misleading, okay. And your reason for misleading?
I believe that this information is available.
I have to say, Councillor is correct. So, correction? So I'll hold that point of order.
I will speak and say the information is available. It was emailed to us in a long list, and there was 14 different valuations for 14 different titles at Roffey Lake Park. And if any councillor added them all up, you might have been able to work it out. You could possibly, the public could possibly FOI it. But we've got 600 pages of agenda here tonight. We've got all this minutiae, and we don't want to tell the public about our 1.3 billion. Our biggest asset. We want to keep it sort of away from the public or not readily accessible. We voted in our original council plan to try and be more transparent. This is a fairly straightforward transparency item, and we can have the debate Councillor Goff tried to initiate before. Once we see the data, we're supposedly setting up a property investment portfolio and being all serious about property, and we're speaking against getting basic data, but just straight out valuation data that's taken every 12 months. I'm just surprised to hear those objections.
We'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Unanimously carried. Thank you. Item 15, urgent business. There is no items of urgent business. Item 16, councillor question time, councillors. Does anyone wish to provide a report or raise a question? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
I would like to very happily report that a couple of Fridays ago, on Friday the 22nd, that the Liberal leader Matthew Guy announced that if he is elected, they will invest $15 million in a brand new multi-purpose indoor sports facility at Templestowe College. Now, councillors would remember we had a budget submission from Templestowe College seeking support. $6 million was a big ask, but the opposition has come straight out and said, here's $15 million. As we know, they've got 1,200 students, over 130 in their basketball program, all squeezed into one court, and they spend $130,000 a year busing and renting our facilities at Templestowe Leisure Centre because they're not like Doncaster or East Doncaster and don't have two courts. So I just think it's a terrific announcement, and I really strongly call for the Labor government to match it going into the election so we can get a brand new state-of-the-art multi-purpose indoor sports hub at Templestowe College, which will also have benefit for the local community, as Mr. Guy says in his press release.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Any other councillors? Councillor Chen.
Just want to report to Mayor and my fellow councillors that the resurfacing works at Tom Kelly Athletic Track at Rice Street Reserve has been completed and is formally opening up to the public to enjoy. So on a beautiful Sunday morning, I went there and mingled with the public. That is really just fabulous. And I overheard an old couple that say that, well, how amazing they have the acid track for them to walk and without hurting their knees. So what a wonderful works. And that is one of the very few athletic tracks in the whole municipality, Melbourne, that opens to the public 24/7. So yeah, I congratulate all the works done by officers, because although there are some delays, but it is overall because of the weather, we all know about that. But overall, just want to let officers and councillors know that how appreciative that the community are to those beautiful works. It doesn't cost much. Just slightly over $1 million, but the benefit is enormous. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Great outcome. Any other councillors? That being done, councillors, confidential items. There are no confidential items at item 17, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, councillors.